creating stuff in your own sound just to kind of, in the same way, I guess a researcher would go back and say, this is what I've been able to kind of come across, and this is what I'm putting out for any of you guys to maybe take from it and create. Is that your approach as an artist, or is that, or how do you feel about that as an overall?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good analogy. Looking back at the creative process, I guess I would say there's a few strong influences, and it's interesting for me because the things that I think of as influences may not necessarily be reflected in my work, but I think one of the great things about music is it's so like the way I feel about it is it's kind of like a language, so there's a set of you express certain ideas in certain ways, and people talk about stuff being original, but I mean it's still the language at the end of the day. If you're going to communicate something in a language, you got to use the words of the language. You can't just go making up new words all the time, or nobody understands what you're saying. So I think with my stuff, yeah, a lot of it is finding ideas that really connect with me, and I figure if they connect with me, they're going to connect with other people too, hopefully, right? So
Yeah, and that's one of the big things that I get from hearing you and having heard your weeknights release, which was, for me, I'm usually a person that's able to easily draw, not necessarily correct comparisons to people's work, but I'm able to draw where, okay, this may have come from this, or this may have been influenced by this, but your work was such a treat in the way that it seems so refreshing, where to me, even like as, you know, this is really one of our first times speaking, but I have not necessarily that I don't have an interest in knowing what your influences are, but I just see that the overall qualities of music production and what a lot of artists have been saying through, just sounds overall, it really seems to be on your sleeve well. Like, for example, I think there are certain aspects within some of your work I was listening to that really call back to a lot of like work from, and I don't know if you're really that influenced by Golden Living Room, but it has some Golden Living Room vibes to it while also maintaining a bit of like, synth wave, and not even this actual now synth wave, but I would say some of the early like 2010, 2011, not necessarily Com Truce, but that could be the biggest one I could think of that I could name off the top of my head. And
mm,
it's just blended so well into a point where it also has again a bit of like a trap, a vapor trap kind of thing going for it, but it like it's very down the middle in a way that again it's pleasing because it doesn't seem to want to necessarily again hold on to one aspect over the other as much more as it's this is again what I've taken, and this is where these differentiating sounds can kind of be blended in. I feel it also, it reminds me a lot of like one of the things I like about music from the 80s, that it had this constant like culture clashing sound to it, yet none of it really was familiar to one another, whether you'd be listening to like Fun Boy 3 or like Public Image Limited or any of like the other 80s bands that have fallen by the wayside to some, that again took a lot of differentiating sensibilities of the music production of the time that was also new at the time, whether it be like the hip hop that was changing in that time or some of the electronic music that was becoming more accessible to people. Those kinds of artists that I just mentioned previously took a lot of those aspects, and also some of the past things, like for example with Big Audio Dynamite, they had a lot of like electronic influence hip hop, but they also went back to the influences of like dub reggae from the 60s, 70s. And in that same regard, I see your work as a contributing sort of spirit of that same ethos without necessarily seeming like it's even influenced by that. And it's one of the things that why for this show I felt it was really important to have you on. It builds a form of, I would say, um, and this is by no means disrespect, but it builds like a childish naivete of like, well, it. I did this incidentally or accidentally, but it's because of the fact that I was driven by the same kind of factors that drove those artists of the past. So that's why saying everything in the beginning in regards to like I don't necessarily have an interest about what specifically influenced you is where that comes from. If you can understand that, this overall statement.
Right, right, yeah.
And with that, and I haven't truly having said this fully loaded thing, I want to know how much of that is correct, or how much of this do you think maybe again I may have hit on something, or I don't know. It's just again with a release like Weeknights, they come around very few, especially for in my eyes that I besides vaporwave and all the music genres that I've had on this show, I like to listen to different types of music all the time. And listening to your release, I very seldomly ever say that, oh, I wish I had listened to this last year so I could have put it at my end of the year lists. I'm so upset that I had kind of missed it out. But I don't know. With all that praise, I just want to again know how much of this kind of approach to creation is really for you like this, or what is your creation process when taking things that have influenced you.
I think there's kind of it's kind of a dual process. So um, if I'm going to set out to write something in particular, like if I'm going to say, okay, we're going to write something in X genre, um, my approach is going to be different and frankly a bit stiffer than if I'm going to just write something sort of stream of consciousness. What Weeknights and a lot of the stuff that I've been working on lately has done that's been nice is it's kind of enabled me to sort of just write stream of consciousness. I'm not thinking about trying to make it a certain, like I'll have an idea in mind of what I want to do, but it's more just okay. This is in my head. Let's just get it out now. I think I tend to draw like I've had kind of a unique background musically in that sense because I didn't come necessarily from a music production background. I kind of got into music sort of accidentally, and I think what ends up happening there is my exposure to music ends up being a bit different. Like I don't know if there's any sort of I don't know if you can say there's a traditional path that people follow musically. I don't think you can really say that, but I do like to draw a lot from all kinds of different influences. I mean, if it sounds good, it is good, right? So I just love that variety of being able to just draw from different genres, pull in elements, be like, hey, what if we put some of the it's like a big salad or I don't know, something like that. You just put all these ingredients together and like, hey, does this taste good? And sometimes it really doesn't, and sometimes you get something that's like, huh, that's really neat. I really like that.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my next question, which was how long have you been doing music? I mean, in the regards as everybody has their own distinctions of when they've actually been doing something, but for you, how long do you think you've been making music for and working on stuff?
Okay, well, so what happened with me is I took piano lessons when I was, I guess, 6 or 7, and I didn't really. I was always more of the vein. I didn't like practicing. I wanted to just write my own stuff, which of course I didn't really know how to do. So the stuff that I wrote when I was 6 or 7 was really bad. But then I took a few years off and kind of got back to it by accident when I was about 15. So this is going back. Well, I guess 2000, end of 2008, I guess is when it was probably. And so what I did, me and a friend were kind of messing around with Audacity, and just taking songs and messing around with them there. And so we kind of got into it that way. It wasn't from a musical standpoint, a composition standpoint. It was more from a computer standpoint. Let's see how we can process that. So I kind of got back into that in 2008 and started picking stuff up again, writing stuff. And again, the thing is, you start out and you kind of have to have this ignorance to keep going at it because it takes a while before I thought any of my stuff was actually half decent. But the thing is, when you start out, you're like, hey, this is great. So you're just writing all this stuff and going along thinking it's awesome, and it's really not. But anyways, point being, around that time I started getting into that, and you kind of you work with that for a few years, and then uh, then I guess the last 2013, 2014, started doing some music, like actually for like music libraries and commercial stuff like that. So that's which is totally different from the Goji 93 stuff, but so kind of got into it in that and just sort of built over the last number of years with Vaporwave in particular. I didn't. I'm pretty late to the party as far as that goes. Like I didn't even know it existed until early 2019.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and, yeah, so you could, so depending on who you talk to, that's after the peak of vaporwave as a thing. But I kind of discovered it by accident. I was just trying to expand, kind of broaden my horizons, working in different styles. So you go on Wikipedia and you find stuff, and it's like, oh, I've never heard of this before. I wonder what that sounds like. So you go check it out on YouTube, and the very first vaporwave, I guess, album that I heard was Plume Valley, Windows 96.
Hmm.
And it was kind of funny because at the time I'm like, this is kind of like, I wasn't a big fan of it at first, but the thing with Plume Valley that I did really like is it really reminded me so much of David Weiss, the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack from early 90s, right? Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And awesome game, fantastic soundtrack. And that just that kind of hooked me, and I'm like, okay, well, let's check out some more of this stuff. And so it's kind of funny because I didn't really like it at first, but it kind of grew on me after a few months, and then I'm like, okay, well, maybe we can start writing some stuff a bit like this. So yeah, I guess, and then working in this started basically fall of 2019, so I'm still fairly new at working in this kind of style of music.
It's amazing to hear you say that because it does not seem, again, like you're a person that has been, like you've said so yourself, you kind of this late to the party, which I don't think there's any party to be late to, and I have my certain opinions and reasons as to why, and I'll share right now. But one of the things that really backs up the reason for having you on the show and makes itself really clear by just having you say that is that for this episode we really wanted to uh, capture an idea that when it comes to being creative or doing something that requires the you know I would say the mental capacity to really extend yourself while also trying to extend out to others, even if it's in a metaphorical sense by being creative. I think that at least to me personally, it seems that taking a form of a hobby approach, not to being an artist, but just to kind of being in the way of, like, for example, you're saying back in '08, you and your friend were just messing about with the computer. It wasn't really from that's whether it was an intentional hobby of your guys's or anything. It's just more of less a passion driven thing and just kind of keeping an explorative um, approach to it is another part of the creative process, I think, that really goes underrepresented a lot. And your work, again, gives me, like I've said previously, from having listened to Weeknights, that exact vibe, which is I'm going to take the time to take this work in, see how I feel about it, kind of experiment around, feel things, and this is gonna come out in this regard. And even through that, it comes out just as passionately as an album that was put with a lot of concept and emotion behind it. And to hear you say also that you were influenced by Windows 96 work and seeing some comparison to that of the soundtrack of Donkey Kong Country is another thing again that for me draws a lot of strength to that of it's always good for people to give themselves the openness to really take in things unless there's a certain like apparent reason as to why something should not be given an opportunity by the individual. I think it always sometimes will pay for that, to give things an opportunity. Your work again seems like you've spent your time really like for a long time, for years, but you've only been around in it since 2019, which is again amazing to me, and I think it just further builds on the idea that I think no person should ever be, you know, overwhelmed or scared by the idea of creating something because they may be, you know, quote unquote late to a party. And
Yeah.
with that too, anybody that may be watching right now that may not be necessarily, you know, well, besides this, having, you know, you provided us a set here, is there anything else that in the near future we can be on the lookout for from you on this realm of, you know, Goji 93, or is there something else that's already in the works that you may be thinking is relevant towards what we've already experienced from you here?
Yeah, so I'm working on a full length album right at the moment. It's, I mean, want to put a percentage to it, it's, 85-90% done. I'm hoping to get it out before summer. It's kind of just, we're just finalizing some of the arrangements and getting some stuff mixed at this point. Um, yeah, so I'm really excited about that. It's kind of, I started working on that. Well, I think I started working on that actually even before Weeknights came out. But the concept for this album is it sort of takes a bit of a look at how life has changed. Now I say concept because Weeknights sort of has a concept to it, but it didn't really start out with a concept. It was more, okay, let's write as many sort of vaporwavy songs as I can and see if any of them kind of cluster together to form something that could resemble an album. It was not very well thought out. But with the next album that we're working on, I'm working on, it was kind of looking at the concept of how things have changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, looking at a lot of vaporwave stuff plays very heavily on nostalgia. Whether if it's for the way things were in the 80s, 90s, whatever. But one of the things that kind of spoke to me, as we went through the period starting last March, when things started locking down around here, and then so many adjustments, you kind of develop this. You start thinking about the way things used to be before all of the restrictions, and so you start thinking, well, all of the things you used to be able to do, how things have changed, right? So it just, yeah, I think what I wanted to do with it is you kind of start, it kind of takes you on a bit of a journey through thinking about some of the freedoms that you had, whether that was, just being close to people, like physically, it's a small thing, but we kind of took it for granted a lot before. And then it kind of goes through the mental, the psychological journey where you go from that to now it's like, okay, you kind of hit this sort of wall, where it's like everything, you're kind of numb to everything. And then from there, it kind of ends on a bit of a more hopeful note. But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm working on right now. I'm hoping that'll be ready to go in the next few months. I've been, the last song, the last song I wrote for it was back in the end of December. So at this point, but I mean, I've wanted to tweak some of the arrangements a bit and mess around with it, and then get it mixed and get the album art going and stuff like that. So that'll be out in the next little bit. A little longer term, I'm also working on a sort of, I guess you could call it. I like to think of it as sort of an ambient / small soft type concept album that's kind of exploring the idea of brutalism as a design philosophy. So, when I think of brutalism, I think of, sort of big austere buildings and stuff like that, but also the kind of garish clashing colors that sometimes you saw in early internet graphic design. And just kind of exploring what that sounds like. What does that sound like? What space does that put you in? So that'll be probably quite a number of months away, but that's sort of in the works as well. So I've definitely got some other things that I'm working on right now, and I'm excited to put out in the not too distant and a little more distant future.
That all sounds amazing, and with what you're saying, one of the things that I want to touch on, before we get towards the tail end of the interview here, is that your work does seem like it has a conceptual idea to it. Like for example, like Weeknights also has a bit of a cyberpunk undertone to me, but it's not cyberpunk in the way where it's trying to have me look at necessarily some non-existent corporation idea kind of thing like that. As much more it's has me kind of looking in at some of the stuff that may have happened that I feel may be relevant towards the sound that you're creating, which is one of the things I find so unique about the Weeknights release in specific. So to hear that your next releases are going to be a little more conceptual sided than what even this came out as is a really exciting thing, because I already perceive you as a person who's able to seamlessly interweave all of these kinds of worlds for people without necessarily even trying to paint characters to them. And that's one of the things that I personally, and I know a lot of people watching, really tend to love and hold close. So we look forward to seeing a lot of that work coming into the future from you. With that, we are getting close to the end, and I wanted to ask that beyond just us having reached out and, you know, really experiencing your work, is there anybody else that you feel within this community so far that you've been involved in, you have a form of shout out, or you want to give them a hey, what's up, real quick on the show?
Yeah, no, I think certainly the people that have kind of supported me from early on, Bayou Official over at Wave Racers. Hopefully, I'm saying that correctly. Apologies if not. Rodan Speedwagon, of course, getting on for Spotify playlist. Really appreciate uh, you know taking an interest in the music, and of course my the cover artist that I work with, Julie. She's been awesome to work with. Put some super high quality stuff together, and even some of the options for the covers, of Weeknights. Like, man, they were fantastic. It was so hard to make a decision on the album art for that. So yeah, some great people that have worked with along the way.
That's great. And before we leave, I just want to ask one last question. If you think you may be able to give something, of whether it be insight or advice to people, but I feel with what we talked about today and with everybody having experienced your set and some of your work, I think this would be an appropriate question to ask, which is, to anybody that may be watching today or may watch on the future archives of this stream here, that may not necessarily be too involved in whether it's vaporwave or a music community of it, but still watches from afar and is interested. What advice could you give them in regards to approaching or feeling comfortable enough to be creative?
I think sometimes you have to do it even if you're, and I think that's important. And I think that's one of the things that I struggled with for a long time. For especially my late teens and early 20s, I really struggled with some mental health issues. And I mean, I still do to an extent, but I think it's been tough because, you kind of build this, I don't want to say comfort zone because that makes it sound like you're not, venturing out enough. But I think sometimes you just have to do stuff, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable, because I think it's better to have tried and failed than to never have tried at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's really the biggest thing I would say. And I wish I'd done that sooner, I guess, frankly.
I think a lot of us do, but to hear you say that, it's no more helpful and no more advice than I could have, and I know a lot of audiences could have asked for. It really means a lot to hear you say that. I'm sure a lot of the audiences would feel the same way. That it also helps a lot of us here at the show, which some days, we feel a little more unmotivated, but when really assessing the situations of how it is we feel, it turns out it's more a little scared to just continue to try and do new things for people. And it's always worth a try to do something, especially if it means that much to us in a personal level, where again, even if it's not continuously on the front burner of our mind, it's still there and it's good to explore, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
And with that, it was a pleasure to be able to have you on, Goji. I can't thank you again enough for being able to give us some of your time to interview you, and for you also providing us this amazing set that I'm sure all of our viewers at home or at work enjoyed a lot. And we hope to hear from you again very soon.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate being a part of this, and yeah, hopefully we'll get the album out in the near future, and we'll have some more stuff to listen to.
We look forward to it, and we look forward to having some of that on the show. And with that, everybody, that was Goji, and we'll be right back with our next performer. Thank you.
Friggin' dorm that got some marijuana. I had to do it.
Drugs.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Man, glad that finally cooled down. And I'm feeling energized because our next artist is a band, and that band is Daisy. And Daisy is a hardcore noise rock punk outfit coming out of Southern California, but originally funded or founded is more of what I'm trying to say in the East Coast, I believe Boston area to be exact. And we have an interview with one of the members after this upcoming showcase. And what this band for me is a great representation, and why it fits so well with the episode in which we focus primarily on trying to relax and take a break, is because within trying to relax and take a break, if you recall back, and if some of you guys were here for the early introductory monologue to today's show, is to not necessarily ignore the stressors in life or anything as such, but more so experience and live within them while trying to assess and trying to maintain energy to better attack or approach or solve any obstacle or challenge one may have in their way. And the work of Daisy, to me, is a great representation of that. In this upcoming showcase, you will see something that I will echo back in the interview that you'll see after, but it's that of having a unity within the idea of the stressors of everyday life that a lot of us may actually coincide with and have more in common with than we realize. And Daisy does a great job of approaching and exemplifying that, and this is a great wake up for that kind of sense that I wanted to, I guess, put into this episode here when it comes to, again, the reason as to why it's important to relax and to have some form of rest, whether it's metaphorically, spiritually, or physically, which is the most important one, which is why I pulled internet's favorite punching bag, John Lennon, and decided to do the show from bed. It's not any form of political statement. It's much more it's a statement of we should rest while still living and relishing in some of our obstacles to get up and do something fucking about them. And with that, let's give it up for Daisy. Thank you.
this was special for us. Thank you so much.
Where's your bass? Up there. You want to grab it? I want to grab And he's gonna put a strap on, so we'll play something that we don't play.
We have one more. We want to thank Model Actress very much for having us, and Minty Boy, sorry. And Ivan Wayman is here that recorded the record we just put out. I want to thank him. And my buddy Sean's here who was on the cover of it. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. Thank you guys so much.
That's all me, just like, all right, let me get this out of the way.
Thank you and welcome back. That was Daisy, whose guitarist Andy now joins us for this interview. But, like we always do, we have a little bit of an introductory summary, I like to call it, of the artist here, or in this case, the band. Daisy are a Southern California noise punk experimental, I like to also call, outfit, who originally have ties back to the East Coast. Boston might be the exact place. The founder, Max, who isn't able to join us today, started the outfit there and was later on joined by, here is Andy. And the reason I'm a little nervous, as you guys can tell, is because the music of Daisy encapsulates the same spirit that one would find in something similar to that of what I'm currently wearing, which is a Discord Records t-shirt. The spirit of that label, as well with Daisy, reminds me as well as the spirit you find in things such as Throbbing Gristle, like one of my favorites as well, NWA, Death Grips. I could go on and on. There's also a lot of bands that I've listened to from Sacred Bones as well, who also capture an essence of, I don't necessarily want to go for the working class, but it actually encapsulates that, as well as a major cacophony of the bullshit that some of us tend to run into. And that spirit is caught even further, well, with their most recent release, which is $273.96. And we'll talk a little more about that with none other than Andy, who now joins us. Thank you very much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you guys finally being able, or you being able to be a representative of this with us. Just because of the fact that we've been talking for a while now, and I think it was you and I primarily who were in speaking terms about you being on the show and you guys having your guys' work with us. And one of the things that your work, again, like I really wanted to capture in this intro, is a form of it feels like you're trapped, but it's not a trapped feeling that I think a lot of bands or a lot of musicians now tend to capture, unless like I felt other groups like Death Grips, Clipping, other lesser, smaller bands, but it definitely captures an anxiety that it seems only the cubicle type world, would be most familiarized with that. How much of that seems to be intentional, especially with a release like 273 with 96 cents, which also in ways reminds me of Pink Floyd's Umagumma in the way that it's structured. And I just, it makes me think about how much of those kinds of things tend to be intentional, but at the same time tend to be just a reaction of the certain, form of claustrophobia that we tend to live in day-to-day life right now.
Yeah, I think all those things are pretty accurate. I'm kind of wish Max was here to chat about it. Maybe I'll just try to bug him to get on and do a solo thing at some other point in the future. But yeah, I know that when the pandemic started and everything started going down, he had actually kind of timed moving out of his place, and I don't mean to speak for him, but moving out of his spot, and pretty much immediately went to Boston, where he's just been crashing up there. But he got a pretty dark job, and maybe I'll just let him elaborate a little bit more on it. And I think the 40-hour work weeks and brutal work that he was doing kind of really shaped the feel and the mood of the music, which was pretty much already done. So from there, it was just, we all feel that. We've all had shitty jobs and struggled, and still do, a lot of us. So it's just a representation of that, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. And see, Andy, with you in particular, this is something where we could focus more on your contributions, specifically to this release, is your guitar playing seems to come at a very structured, yet very loose, almost, I guess, beef-heartish vibe to it, but without necessarily wanting to throw the ideas of it out, but trying to, again, encapsulate this form of, I guess, similar to that of my interview poise, a structured, still put together, yet anxious mess that could kind of barely, like a steam engine, if you will. I like the ways that in some of the tracks you seem to seamlessly go from, I would almost say it reminds me of Jim O'Rourke's work, whether it's with Sonic Youth or some of the later on experimental work that he did. But you turn your guitar almost into like this drone effect that can later on pick up into these type of chord progressions that almost harken back to that of like, I would almost say math rock, but you're not even trying to go there, it seems to me. Now, what were some of the inspirations behind some of the guitar playing in this particular release, as opposed to, 10 persons, 10 colors? Were you involved in that previous release too?
I was, yeah. And a lot of those songs Max had kind of already written, and just to kind of give a brief breakdown of that, Max had a lot of these demos, which I hope at some point, I mean, I guess we do have the record, but I don't know I think some of it's on like the old Spotify under the other name, but some of those demos were just Max playing bass and playing drums. And then we just kind of built off of that for that first record. Knowing that we just kind of needed to get something out and kind of have something palatable. So we worked with our buddy Ivan, who's awesome, just fantastic. Just never want to not use him ever because he's just the best. But to finish that one, this one I think was just a little bit more angry. And I think we'd actually had intent to go in there to write this third record that we're going to release here soon. I don't know how long it's going to be, but we're actually currently working on it. But we wrote a bunch of songs for this record coming up, and not really like intending to do this other one, but then it just kind of was like, whoa, we have all this material, and it kind of just flowed. I was listening to a lot of different noise, and especially like a lot of Japanese noise rock. And I think that just kind of really fucked with me, and I was adding a lot of pedals to my board, and that's kind of where the noise, the drone kind of came from, because really that's all that turn away from, like turn away 1 till it finishes is really 45 minutes of just chaos. And we really actually got cut off because I think Griffin was tracking it at the time and may have missed, I don't know if his computer crashed or something, but there was probably another half hour of music on there that just didn't get tracked, which is kind of a bummer, but I'm pretty excited with the outcome. I think I think our intent at the onset was pretty much to write for this record we're going to be releasing here soon. And before it was all over, it was like, how can we administer the most hurt, I guess, and pain? And this is what that record feels like. It just feels like it's like, it hurts. That's all.
Oh no, it definitely does.
Yeah.
One of the things I appreciate about Daisy as an overall project is something that I also appreciate about another band that I don't know if a lot of people would share that same sentiment that I have, but something about Swans and your guys' music and the way in which it's structured, almost like musical pieces that make me feel like, I don't know why, but I feel like this type of rock and these type of bands and these type of structures and musically, if I were to be a boxer, it would be one of my favorite type of bands. I would walk out to this type of stuff. I really sense in the vibe that I'm gonna lay you out flat and I'm gonna put this 100%. Aggression into you. And that's one of the things that I don't see a lot of. It's always just a tiptoe. Meanwhile, you guys are jumping in with an entire boulder strapped to your chest. It's one of the things I really, really react with your guys' work, and that's one of the things that brings me into my next question. As a musician, is there anything outside music that you could say maybe contributes to some of your work besides, that of the everyday life? Are you an athlete in any way, or do you exert yourself in any other format that also contributes to the musical process that you put into this work?
I don't know. Actually, it's a good question. I think maybe at that time, I've been athletic throughout my life, basketball, various other sports in high school, and I always loved lifting weights and running. Maybe not for this record was it super obvious. It's probably more drug abuse than it was much else. But this last year has been great because it's given me a lot of time to hit the mountains and run. And that's kind of just been my trip recently. It's been sunshine in the mountains and running and exercise. So.
Yeah, and with you mentioning drugs, that's another thing and aspect of this release that I get that again harkens me to an idea that this is an album about pain, but the understanding and the kind of taste that one should give themselves when it comes to pain and understanding as to why it is that some of us do the things that we do, whether it's having to work a shitty job that gives us $273.96, or whether it's, you know, being physical and athletic and not seeing any gains, or self-medicating and not feeling like you're getting much from it, yet you're still basking in some form of pain that equates from these things, you know? And just like the sirens in the background right now, and, you know, some of the projections that I've had running through here in the back that just kind of run abruptly into our conversation, it's those other factors that I think of when I come to ask about the regards of, you know, is there other physicality that's been involved in putting this together, or even what it's been like listening to the music you've been listening to. You know, you mentioned a lot of Japanese noise rock, or just noise, or, you know, I can definitely hear that as well. One of the things I also hear, which I don't know if you personally are influenced by this, but are you influenced or aware of any of the particular artists on the Ipecac Recordings label? Like, you know, Phantomas or Tomahawk or some of, like, you know, Dead Cross. Do you guys remind me of those type of vibes as well?
Yeah, I think, 100%. I mean, we all draw I mean, we have like I feel like we should publish it, because it's more and more we add to it, and it's got to be up to 200 or 300 songs now. But we have a personal playlist that we just keep contributing to on Spotify, not to give them a plug, because fuck Spotify. But they basically, we all contribute to that, and it just grows and grows with more and more detailed different bands constantly. So, yeah, I mean, I don't even know what I've been cranking on lately, but I think at that time when we were tracking, it was, you know, the obvious Merzbow or Masana or some of those other Japanese noise rock bands. To me, that's such a detailed, crazy form of art, to where you're trying to dissect every tiny detail in the noise, and it feels like a scavenger hunt of sorts almost. And for people that are into that sort of thing, it's pretty gratifying and satisfying especially if you can listen to it at full volume, you know, with headphones on or something for the hour that record is or whatever. There's a weird sort of sadomasochistic or some pleasure in it, I guess.
Yeah, no, and
that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, to me at least, and I'm sure to the audience that either just experienced the set that they just watched, or that are going to experience some of your guys' work later on as well. I think they understand, or they'll understand exactly why we're talking about this, because, again, there is something just to the overall human experience that is very masochistic itself, but the fact that bands like Daisy, for example, are willing to still put that on their sleeve in a way that's not... It's very theatric, but it's more theatrical in a way that I almost see it similar to that of opera than self-indulgent, like something like Broadway, you know?
Yeah,
and
totally.
That's one of the things that, again, I think is such a breath of fresh air for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people as well. Which brings me to another question. On the third album, or on the overall process of the band, how much of this is, you know, also calculated to a degree? Like, do you guys release, like, for example, this album, working on this, did you guys already intend, besides some of the external life things that happen and you know, influence the work musically, did you guys already have an idea where you guys were trying to step in production-wise? Do you guys already plan that out, or is it also just kind of come what may as time goes on?
Do you mean in regards to, like,
Like, if you guys may have demos, do you guys already stick pretty close fairly to what you guys are thinking those demos to build into? Or do you guys let those demos shape differently as time goes on?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, there's some stuff that I think when the pandemic first started happening, Max and I were practically sleeping at our current space, which is around March or something. I mean, we were. It was like a 10, 12 days just spat where we were in there every day, just cranking. I don't know if Griff was out of town or what it was, but it was just him and I for a bit, and we were really just vibing. I mean, he would play drums, sometimes I would play drums and whatever, and we would just kind of go back and forth and vibe off of each other. And there were ideas in that space that we were like, okay, this is awesome, let's keep this and try to build off of that. And that was a year ago. And now there's songs from that. And then there's stuff that we're like, that's so dope. And we try to recreate it and we can't find it anywhere. And there's a bummer there, you know, that stuff doesn't exist anymore or something, but maybe it'll come back. I don't know. So it always kind of just varies. And I was just chatting with my manager at my current job, and we were chatting a little bit about just ideas for the company and stuff like that, and just whatever else. And she had said, you know, I like to write down my ideas and stuff. And I thought, you know, there's so many times where I'll be laying in bed where you're thinking of something, and then it's a great idea, whatever it is, and you're too tired to get up and write it down, and then you just don't, and then you forget about it, and then you never remember it or whatever. And I've kind of had this thing where I've thought, and it might be stupid, it might be the bane of the whole process or something, but if I can't remember, it probably isn't a great idea. I don't think I have the greatest memory, but you know, I think if it sticks, it's probably a good idea. And there's a lot of stuff that is sticking, and it's kind of jabbing us like, hey, you need to like work on this, and we probably will. It's just timing and all the other trash that happens in life.
Yeah, and I feel I can also correspond with that kind of idea as well, pretty familiar too, you know, whether it's me coming up with ideas for the show or on some of my other personal projects. I just kind of feel the same way, that if I don't write the idea by the second or third day because I can't fully remember it, then it must have not been that good. Because I
Totally.
kind of tend to let some of those ideas just germinate or ferment a little bit inside my mind and see if they're sticking around enough. There might be a reason as to why. And this kind of brings me into close to the end of our questions here in regards to the work of Daisy. But I want to ask one thing, kind of going back to your guys' previous work, in particular the song in the single Bleach, the music video. One of the things that people, when we showed this in our last episode, seemed to really react positively to, which I enjoyed, was the way that you guys intercut some of the, you know, more evangelical videos into the end of that, which I wanted to ask how, and this isn't really much of like looking for an opinion base, but is there a big stance behind Daisy and the overall institutionalized status quo and the ways that they tend to be? And when I say the status quo, I mean to just blanket term it on, there's not necessarily one group over one other. Of course, there's more groups and people that are worse off, but I'm saying, I feel like, again, this work is really reflectory of the fact that overall hypocrisy, rather than it just being one particular institution. And I wanted to know how much of Daisy's band statement kind of goes with that. Because another band that you guys remind me of too in certain aspects is, and I don't know if this may be a thing of positive thing, or maybe you're neutral to this, but you guys also remind me of Refused a bit.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
I love her.
And the thing is about
Max actually toured with them with a band called Bleached.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
That was kind of like a surreal moment, like growing up listening to those guys as kids. And now my bandmate's on tour with them. That's pretty cool.
No, that's great. And see, and I asked that just because, you know, I wanted to be more careful and respectful in the ways of approaching this question, you know, because obviously Refused are a monster in and of themselves, as the way that they've approached a lot of their satire, opinions, and their overall messaging. And I don't want it to seem that you guys are correlating with the same thing. But again, with the single and the video for Bleach, and then just this overall album, I just kind of again get a sense that there's just form of either indifference or just kind of dislike towards the overall systems that keep allowing things to fall by the wayside.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think we all have different backgrounds. I think when it comes to institutionalization of things, like I personally played in like this is gonna sound insane, but like a worship band at a church for a good chunk of my life. Like it was a mega church too. It was like 25,000 people, and I'm sure they're upwards of 100 now from when I stopped playing with them. But it was a paid gig, and you know, it was nice to get paid to play guitar and stuff. But it's a job like anything else, which it's kind of funny how that backfires and turns 180 degrees pretty quickly when you thought, oh, I can just play guitar and get paid, and that's great, and I don't have to like, clock in and go like make a latte or something for somebody or whatever. But wound up being kind of a nightmare and taught me a lot. And I don't have any personal gripes towards any particular religion, but I know that I think the institutions themselves are problematic. And we try to steer from that with Daisy a lot too, because I feel like it kind of has to exist outside of the band too, like we have to like, the band is just this idea. It's not the three guys, despite us being the people writing the music or putting on the shows or whatever. It's everybody. To us, it's everybody. Yeah. And personally speaking, I think it's everybody, and it's an open door. It's not a you're in, this is how it is kind of thing. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think we all kind of come from different backgrounds. I know playing at a church for a while, getting paid, and seeing the dog crap shit that happens behind scenes. Yeah. With worship pastors and like the disgusting nature of like screaming at like 80-year-old people in the choir about not like swaying to the right or left during a certain like moment in this worship song while they're passing out like a bucket to put cash into this already multi-million-dollar institution. I think that's just our gripes, and it probably reflected back into 273. It's probably why Max was still bringing in some of that characteristic lyrically, not to speak for him again, but lyrically you could see that he was still kind of riffing off those same gripes that we had then. And I'm sure there's going to be some of that stuff for this next record too. So I think we're at the end of the day, I think that was Benihana. We were just kind of like, okay, there needs to be a switch here in this video. And it kind of felt like that was the most obvious thing, was adding these pictures of, and maybe people are getting healing from it. Maybe it's a sort of, what is it? The pill that is a sugar pill in a trial. I'm not a placebo. Placebo effect, correct. And he's laying his hand on their heads, and maybe all that stuff actually does have an effect. And I haven't done enough reading to really say one way or another, but you're still selling snake oil. You're still selling BS to people, and it's just dishonest. Yeah. And we want to be more honest. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I really hope it doesn't feel like this overall thing has been trying to get you guys to, or get you to say, oh, we're for a certain thing. No, the reason why, again, I've brought this up is where I feel like our conversation kind of leads up to, for me at least, which is I wanted to approach some of this questioning in this regards about the aggression and the type of emotion that the overall messaging I feel I get from Daisy as a project in this regard, because I think that's one of the things that, from doing research for this interview and everything, of having you guys on this show, I went everywhere that I could find your guys' work on, and on your guys' YouTube channel you guys have some of your older shows, or just like parts of the older shows that you guys have done. And I think one of the things that really spoke to me the most, that I think you guys have done even better at than I would even dare say some of our forefathers musically in this type of realm, is that your guys' shows are really fucking personal and are really inclusive without even trying to make it about anything. It just really speaks to the idea again that people can speak and understand aggression when it comes from a place of true humility that also says, I'm not afraid to express this, but I'm not here to show you this. If you can kind of respond to it and it speaks to you, then that's cool. But at the same time, we're not trying to necessarily tell you, hey, this is what particular thing we're standing against or behind. It's the fact that you're out there going to these jobs, or you're out there or wherever you may be, and you get sold the idea of whether it be, a bond or a union with the group or the people you're part of, yet you feel so alone or detached. But here you are at the show here. You don't really know a lot of the people around you, but you feel just as close and bonded as you do with us, the band. And we're not even playing on stage. One of the things I like about you guys is that you guys seem to like playing as close as you can to your audience, with having them around you rather than standing in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing in hardcore bands as I was a kid, and 15, 16 years old, and we always played on the floor. And playing on the floor was like, there wasn't a question. I mean, there's some places where they'd force you on stage or whatever, but feedback issues or whatever else. But when there was an option to play on the floor, that's what we chose as kids. And for whatever reason, I think maybe playing to the church and stuff, I kind of fell away from that. And then touring, it's kind of difficult because you're going to different venues and everybody's got a different setup. But when we're local here, I think Max was kind of the spearhead on that sort of, hey, let's push to play on the floor everywhere we go. And surprisingly, there was always a little pushback from Griff or I where, it was like, well, that's going to be a pain in the ass for the sound guy, et cetera, or whatever. And then it just kind of morphed into, no, this is what we're doing. This is all we're doing. Like, this is a reflection of who we are as people, and this is what we're going to pursue. If we're going to be honest, we're going to try to be honest as much as we can all the time, every time.
Yeah, so. No, and it's great. No, it really is great to see that, because, again, this is basically why it inspired me to have the questions and to do the interview in the way that I approached it, because again, to me, it was really meaningful to see that there could be a show in this day and age, or like you guys used to do before COVID happened, where again, like, you guys have women and people of all sizes and shapes and styles and everybody there, but they all seem to really reflect and speak well with, again, what Daisy's music and overall sound is. And that's a really amazing feat that I hope you guys continue to spread it around once things ease up again. And with that, we're nearing pretty close to the end of the interview, but I have just two more questions to ask. And the first one is, how long, if at all, do you project it would be before we're able to hear your next release? Which, again, there should be no rush for this, because you guys just released 273.96 in mid-January, so it's fairly new, and people definitely should give this still a bit of more of a time. But with that, have you guys already started the progress for the new record, or how's that coming along?
We have, we have 6 that are pretty much locked in. We're just getting, I think Max is working on a few things vocally right now. I was actually just listening to one of the tracks before I got on here. I'm excited about it. It's, in terms of, we kind of want to be different every single time we're doing something, and this, I think, just kind of pushes the envelope a little bit more, and in terms of intensity, and then also kind of there's some conventional aspects of it. Like, it's not, I don't think it falls too much in line with 273, but it will, I think, have that sort of feeling, kind of like 273 reflected 10 persons a little bit, but kind of morphed into its own thing. I'm excited about it. I think it sounds awesome. If I had it my way, we'd release it tomorrow. But I think it's probably going to be summertime. I'd say May or June.
Okay.
I think it's pretty fast turnaround, but we'll see. Pushing for it. Would love it if it happened. Who knows?
Well, hopefully, at least for me as a fan, I really cross my fingers for that. And my basically last question in regards to Daisy as an overall project would be, can we ever expect or look towards having any of your guys' releases physically, as far as cassette or record, or what are your thoughts or viewpoints on that?
Yeah, I mean, we want to. It's just expensive. It's so tough. We got a quote for mixing this upcoming record with somebody that's outside of our realm that we would normally choose, and whether or not we do it or not, maybe we'll talk about it someday. But we were excited to use them and the legend, and it would have been awesome, and maybe we still will. I don't know, but that quote was just like, okay, that's out of our range, but maybe we could figure that out. And that's kind of the same price it would be to just get records printed. So it's definitely in the mix. Maybe one day if some label is like excited about us and wants to just do it for half price or something, or I don't know what that looks like, maybe we'll do it. It's just, I don't know. I would love to. I think records are awesome. I personally would. I know Max would too. I know Griff would too. We all think it's awesome. It's just kind of like that back burner thing. I'd hope within the next few years, both of those first two records will be available, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, my following question is basically one tied less with your guys' project and more as throughout the whole set and your guys' interview here, we've had links up to your guys' various pages. But if there was somebody to be watching either on a future archive of this stream or during the live stream, is there a particular place in which maybe somebody could reach out to you guys, say they wanted to speak to you about the possibility of maybe doing a physical release collaboratively or something, even along the lines of wanting to do something together with you guys, whether creatively on any format? Where would be the best place to reach out to you guys?
I don't know if so. We have a manager now, and she's awesome. Her name's Nilüfer. I don't know what her email is, but it might just be in the link tree on our Instagram.
Okay.
I kind of run the Instagram account, but I don't really know, because I know Max designed that link tree with Nilüfer.
Okay.
I wish I had the link stuff. Maybe I'll just text it to you after this chat, but I know our email is daisyofficial@gmail.com. They could always email us there. That's great. Or honestly, just kind of like how you and I connected through Instagram is the easiest. And that's, I think, @Daisy_official. I'd be wrong about that.
No, I think it is. And with that, Andy, if there's anything else that you'd like to say, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This is exciting, and I'm glad we got a chance to finally do it, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I literally am butting this up to I have to be to work in 20 minutes, so yeah, we pushed it.
And
it was awesome.
I'm glad we finally did. It was more than a pleasure to have you on and to have you be a representative of the band. And I look forward to having you guys on the show again, whether it be in a music video or just promotional way. Just know that Sight, Sounds, and Conversations is a home for you guys now.
I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Yeah, this has been fun. Hopefully we can do it with everybody else next time.
Oh,
I'm sure Max will be texting me. He might have already texted me. Well, what do I do here? He's not very tech savvy.
No, it's not a problem. We'll definitely look to having you guys all as a band together one day soon. And again, guys, that was Andy with Daisy, and I hope you guys will stick around for our following performer. Thank you. Thank you. That was Daisy. I hope Daisy gave you guys some form of um, positive anger towards, wanting to harness something into putting some actual um, positive change, whether it be into your personal life or just in the bigger whole of what one is and what surrounds one. Now we're here at our headliner for the night, which is none other than Earthboy Advance. Earthboy Advance is the culmination and what I wanted the episode to eventually coalesce and be at the end of, which is that of a victory run type feeling of having overcome. And Earthboy Advance's work to me is definitely a representation of that. I First off, you'll see during the set is, for those of you that have not actually witnessed or seen Earthboy Advance's work, is that it's a form of blend between lo-fi hip-hop, vaporwave, electronic, I would also say elements of 8-bit almost. I know it's not necessarily entirely there, but it's there in a sense, in a way, for at least me. And one of the most amazing things is how, I'm not sure, he could correct me or anybody that's more in tune with the whole of Earthboy Advance's work, is that he, first off, I know for a fact he uses DAW. We can call it that, but it's a program that's for the Switch to create music, and it's created by Korg. I actually happen to have it as well. They actually did some collaborations where they also allowed and by they I mean the video game companies. I think it was Taito, and I think the second one may have been Sega. They allowed some of the, I don't know if you could say that they ported, but they basically made it to where they reproduced some of the sound chips for some of the consoles or arcades that would make certain soundtracks. And Earthboy may not entirely use those particular ones, but he uses the Korg, program that's on the Switch to create music, which is an amazing feature. No less also intertwining some other things involving whether it be an SP sampler, or it may be something like also using, and this is where I need some form of correction if needed be in the chat here, but also I think there's a chaos pad being used as well, in the way that all of these things are utilized and blended together, build for an auditory experience unlike others. And this is one of the things that I will never get tired of repeating here on the Sight Sounds and Conversations, in which I think that this artist, our headliner here, Earthboy Advance, is again, I think, a great end-all be representation for today's show, which is of sticking to, taking things at a pace. Now, this is not me speaking in any way whatsoever for Earthboy Advance, but for me, from my experience of listening, I think that taking things at a pace and, using some of the obstacles you've had can accumulate to something as amazing as the work of Earthboy Advance. And that's what I get in the overall, and which is why I'm more than thankful to have been able to have had Earthboy Advance be our headliner for today. And let's go ahead and give it up to Earthboy Advance. Thank you. that was another edition, another episode, another broadcast, another live stream, another day with Sights, Sounds, and Conversations. I really want to thank all of you for watching and sticking around this long, and for either coming back and watching the archive stream of this. I also want to thank all of the artists that were, contributors or that supported the show this month once again in whatever way you did, whether it was including a set, an animation, a sketch, anything that was included in this episode. I am again thankful to have had all of you guys here. Thank you again to EALO. Thank you again to Casual Alien. I also continue to be in shock and awe to have gone Daisy and to have been able to have had Earthboy Advance, Goji 93, Heaven Drugs. Who else do I feel like I'm missing? I mean, Square Peg, I can't even mention again how much we continue to be thankful that we have you being here along with us for the upcoming ride of what is to come for Sights, Sounds, and Conversations in the future. I also want to thank, once again, our interview that we had earlier today in the show with Monica Molo, and I hope that we can be in collaboration with one another once again, whether it be having an input from yours here on Sight, Sounds, and Conversations, or returning onto your 360 podcast. Thank you also to Cucks for their very amazing and informative cooking sketch we had earlier. Dominic, once again, Sega Octopus, thanks for all the behind-the-scenes work here as well. And once again, thank you to all the viewers here, and just bearing with us here for anything that, we show and bring you guys. It's something that nobody really asks in the way that we bring it, but we're glad that we're able to offer in a way that it's what we feel that we could be best at just offering. And for that, I want to continue to just thank you for offering all the openness that you guys have offered us to continue to be as we are here on the show. I would not have been able to feel comfortable to do this show from bed had I not, thought that I have the proper form of support that I've had from all of you guys in the audience watching. And we will be back next month on probably the end of the month, but we can assure you that we will be back with a lot more artists, a lot more art, and a lot more entertainment and fun for all of you guys here at Sight, Sounds, and Conversations. We love you and thank you.
It's a kind of a strange sensation.
The only crossed my mind. Discover the wonder.